advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished. And they're being punished by tariffs. It's a very powerful weapon.
The Trump administration is pausing all military aid to Ukraine. And this comes after Friday's Oval Office dust-up with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
When you would talk to the Biden administration officials in private, when you ask them what's the plan, they would honestly tell you, well, we're just going to send them weapons for as long as we can and hope eventually they can turn the tide. Hope is not a strategy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. Today is March 4th, 2025, Anno Domini. Folks, we're watching history unfold. The Trump-Vance Doctrine is not some reality TV drama. This is a tectonic shift, a full-on rewiring of the global game. Forget the neocons and Bill Kristol crying into their stale war plans. This is Trump and J.D. Vance dropping the sledgehammer on the old playbook. Ukraine, Zelensky stomping his feet in the Oval Office, and now he's caving, but he's missing the memo. He's not the star here. This is about the big dogs, Russia, China, and the United States. Now look at the plan's genius. You tilt Russia west, away from Xi's creepy bear hug, and leave China dangling like a bad date. No more bleeding American lives in some muddy ditch halfway around the world. Trump's not playing White Iraq 2.0. Like Raheem Kassam says, and he'll be on later. He'll be playing 4D chess while Europe is stuck in a World War I fever dream fantasy, rattling their empty tank garages. Britain's Keir Starmer is bragging about boots on the ground. Buddy, you can't even fuel your trucks or pay your gas bill. This isn't retreat, it's dominance through brains, not bombs. The globalists panicking. Their forever war cash cow is drying up, and they're mad that Trump is not their errand boy. Zelensky here is a sideshow. The real fight is a decade out. Picture it. America first. Russia balanced to our corner, China on the ropes. Vance gets this. That's why he's 48. Why die for a border nobody can find on a map when we can win bloodlessly? The haters call it crazy, but no, it's cold, hard realism. 10 years from now, you will see. This was the moment we stopped being suckers. Trump and Vance aren't just shifting policy, they're shifting power. And the elites can scream all they want, the people still get it. This is our shot, and we're taking it. So wake up, America. Go time is here. That's what President Trump is going to be speaking about later tonight in his joint address to Congress, his joint address to Congress and the Senate, the House and the Senate. When he's there tonight, Corey Compatore's family is going to be there. The family of Laken Riley will be there. This is a monumentous event. I'm going to be live tonight for both the address as well as the aftermath with Charlie Kirk and the Thought Crime crew. So make sure you tune in for that later tonight. And folks, stay strapped or get clapped, because Human Events Daily is going to be right back.
everyone to understand what America First truly means.
Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, Jack Posobiec, here we are back live, Human Events Daily. We're also welcoming in hour 3 of the Charlie Kirk program on the Salem Radio Network. Folks, there's a dirty little secret in the mobile phone industry that the major carriers don't want you to know about. Did you know that the big 3 mobile companies own all the towers in the United States? So if that's the case, what's the difference then between the carriers? Well, there's only one carrier which actually lives by the same values as you, and only one that allows you to choose the best network for you, and that's Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, and the only one that allows you access to all 3 networks. Keep your phone, keep your number, and now keep your values too. With Patriot Mobile that I got to visit last week, we were down there, did the whole show from the studio, got to visit with Glenn and Scott and Lee and the entire team. It's fantastic, and you will know that none of your money is going to the woke left, DEI, or causes that have put America last. And folks, you know they're based in Texas, the real heart of America. Their U.S.-based customer service team makes switching easy, and you will get the same service without compromising quality or convenience. Just go to patriotmobile.com/POSO or call 972-PATRIOT right now. Get a free month of service with promo code POSO. Don't be fooled by other mobile providers pretending to share your values. Support one that actively supports the First and Second Amendments. By the way, I got to see firsthand when we were showing the entire family the gun collection there at Patriot Mobile. These guys really support the Second Amendment. We did so safely. Make the switch today. PatriotMobile.com/POSO or call 972-PATRIOT. Now, we're talking about doing things safely. We're also talking about the Trump-Vance Doctrine, and someone who's written just an absolute missive on this in a way that, we used to have media around the world that would actually describe these things. You might be able to read them in places like The Economist or the Financial Times of London, but we don't have those anymore. So these days we've got Human Events and we've got the National Pulse. And joining us from the National Pulse is their editor-in-chief, Raheem Kassam. What's up, Raheem?
Hello, Jack. Thank you for having me.
So, Raheem, you have the distinction of being someone who was actually there at the initial Maidan protests when this entire revolution kicked off all the way back in 2013, because there's so many people that I see commenting on this situation, the dust-up between J.D. Vance, President Trump, and Zelensky, that don't realize that this was a decade plus in the making. Walk me through your new piece.
Yeah, you and I talk about this all the time, Jack, both on air and off. And it's so frustrating to me because, having been on the ground in 2014, having made the decision to go out to Kiev during those protests to see what it was all about, to actually investigate, ask some questions about what's going on here, who's behind this, who's involved in it. You can still find some of my original reporting back from Breitbart London. I was reviewing it the other day, and that's what really caused me to write this piece. A lot of your audience members will know, and you know, Jack, that I don't often feel compelled to write. I need to feel that compulsion in order to produce a good work. I don't think you should just write for the sake of writing. And I started to go back and I looked at this Steve Saylor essay from back at the beginning of the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and then watched the Man Who Would Be King, the Rudyard Kipling book turned movie, and it all kind of came together in that moment for me this weekend. I started to look at how the U.S. foreign policy establishment, and of course you mentioned in the last block Sir Keir Starmer, the U.K. foreign policy establishment also, and I've called it this for a long time. In fact, Newsweek edited this phrase out of my column in 2022. I call it white Iraq, right? Ukraine, for a long time now. And the reason being is because it's exactly how you concluded in the last block. This is their lifeblood, right? Like, blood is their lifeblood for the defense industry, for the foreign policy establishment, for all of this. And, I'm kind of sick of having to hear these people opine about, what success on the foreign stage looks like when, and I can't scream this loudly enough, they are the ones who presided over the last 20 years of foreign policy failures, right? They are the men who would be king. as Kipling wrote it, and this farce that they have run around the world. Failing, not just failing to solve problems, pretending like they're trying to solve problems, but actually causing more problems. And you see today what happens. Putin comes out and he says, you know what, I can actually help negotiate between the United States and Iran on the nuclear stuff too. So boom, here we are, how many days into the admin, and we've already got a number of foreign policy victories under the president's belt. So that all caused, the compulsion for me in writing this thing. I encourage everybody to read it. Obviously, I would, but it gives a history and a background and a context and thematics to this that I desperately think is missing. Jack, I've had liberal reporters reaching out to me. I've had moderates from my home country in the UK, and I've had people all the way up, into the high levels of the US government reach out to me and say, we loved your piece. We thought it was so intelligent, and I'm not trying to brag about this at all. I want people to understand this information because this is actionable information. These are the types of arguments that you should be having with people, and those are the type of things that lead to that moment in the Oval Office last week, right? Why did JD say and behave the way he did? Because it's not a new spat that we're having here. It's an entirely new doctrine.
That's exactly right. And so the way that I've looked at it, it's what's interesting, though, I guess I would argue, is that it's in fact a reversion to the previous doctrine. It's a reversion to the pre-1990s doctrine that just about every country around the world held, as well as all the great, and specifically all the great powers. So what you're looking at here, the great statesmen, Metternich of Europe, and then, even when people talked about people say what they want about Nixon today, but people really do credit him on his foreign policy, engineering the visit to China, which set up the Sino-Soviet split. What this would be a remanufacturing of a Sino-Soviet split, but in reverse. So the Sino-Soviet split was during the Cold War. These two major powers, the Soviet Union and China, were joined at the hip, two communist countries, but Nixon and Kissinger were able to peel them away and then pit them against each other as they are natural competitors. What this would essentially, because look, folks, basic game of chess, if you were up against two other major powers, would you want them ganging up against you, or would you want to try to get them to fight each other? So the idea then being is peel the Russians away from the Chinese. It doesn't mean embracing them. It doesn't mean justifying them. It means being smart and being realistic. And that's exactly what J.D. Vance was talking about.
Yeah, look, it's almost like he understands actual geopolitics, right? So Halford Mackinder and Mahan and all these things that we talk about over and over, it's almost like he is the grown-up in the room. And again, let me put my UK hat on for this, because, a lot of people are, oh my goodness, we're now fighting with the Brits. How could this ever happen? Unprecedented, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, but Ronald Reagan refused to back our literal war in the Falklands while Margaret Thatcher was prime minister, and those two were inseparable. And, Trump's not Reagan, but Sir Keir Starmer is certainly no Thatcher. So the idea that this is somehow, new and unprecedented, and we've never seen disagreements between allies and friends and partners abroad before, is an absolute nonsense. And you should disregard the words of anybody who tells you differently. Forget about it. They're children. They have no historical context for what they're saying. And Jack, what you just mentioned is perhaps the most important part of all of this, right? For those of us who are looking 10, 15, 20 years down the pike, the driving the wedge between Russia and China is the single most important thing this administration could possibly do. If you do not achieve that, if you do not do that, you will end up with foreign policy like Obama's, which is trying to put out fires around the world, but putting them out with gasoline. And that's what he did, and that's what happened with Crimea, and that's what happened with the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's what happened with Iran, and so on and so forth. And we are still, President Trump, God bless him, is still putting out Barack Obama's fires.
That's exactly right. And that's why you see Victoria Nuland, who, by the way, something I posted on Twitter, because I don't think a lot of people realize this, or X, that when President Trump suspended all the clearances at Covington and Burling, who's over there as a senior fellow right now? Oh, right, Victoria Nuland. Sorry, Vicky, no more clearance for you. We'll be right back here, Human Events Daily, and Hour 3 of the Charlie Kirk Show on the Salem Radio Network. Raheem Kassam.
25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada are in effect right now, sparking fear of a North American trade war. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Terrence Bates. Just this morning, Mexico's president publicly condemning the move and even promising retaliation. The taxes went into effect just after midnight. President Trump saying the move is to force the two countries to step up efforts to curb fentanyl trafficking and stop illegal immigration. He also wants to eliminate trade imbalances with our northern and southern neighbors, and even is encouraging more factories to relocate to the United States.
What they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs. I would just say this to people in Canada or Mexico: if they're going to build car plants, the people that are doing them are much better off building here, because we have the market. We're the market where they sell the most. And so I think it's going to be very exciting for the automobile companies.
We're ready. We are ready with $155 billion worth of tariffs, and we're ready with the first tranche of tariffs, which is $30 billion, which is already known.
You just heard from Canada's foreign minister, who also says diplomatic talks between the Trump administration and Canadian officials over securing the U.S. northern border are ongoing. For now, however, the tariffs from President Trump will stand. In the meantime, the tariff on Chinese goods has doubled this morning as well. It doubled from 10 to 20% as part of President Trump's strategy. President Trump and his speechwriters putting the finishing touches on tonight's speech to a joint session of Congress. While it's not a State of the State address or State of the Union address, the remarks will likely take on the tone of that sort of speech. The 47th president likely will use the national stage to highlight his efforts to reshape the federal government to crack down on illegal immigration. He'll also discuss his plans to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. Also hanging over the address to the joint session will be the potential for a government shutdown in less than 2 weeks if Congress doesn't pass a budget in order to move the president's agenda forward. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates.
Today, they talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, he's done a great job.
All right, Jack, so back live here, Human Events Daily. Want to welcome in the Charlie Kirk third hour on the Salem Radio Network. Folks, listen up, because I'm about to put you onto something that will change the way you start your day. Blackout Coffee is not just coffee, it's a wake-up call, a call to rise and grind, to push harder and never compromise on what you stand for. This isn't your average cup of joe. Every bag of Blackout Coffee is roasted with purpose, packed with bold flavor, and fueled by the kind of values that built this country: grit, determination, and a refusal to back down. They don't just make coffee, they make a statement. Blackout Coffee is stepping up, adding more warriors to get your orders out faster than ever. So when you hit the order now button, you know your coffee's coming fresh and ready to fuel your next move. Whether you're powering through the daily grind, chasing big goals, or just refusing to settle for mediocrity, Blackout Coffee has got your back. Don't just drink coffee, drink Blackout. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/POSO and use promo code POSO for 20% off your first order. Taste the coffee that doesn't just wake you up, it fires you up. That's blackoutcoffee.com/POSO. I want to welcome back in here Raheem Kassam, the editor-in-chief of the National Pulse. So, Raheem, when we're talking about this broader idea of the Trump-Vance Doctrine, so number one, what we would see from the Bush administration or the Obama administration predominantly were these color revolutions. And the color revolution was this sort of insidious way that the government, I'll say government, let's be nice, would go in and foment regime change by trying to back some separatist group, or in the case, as you mentioned earlier, of the Muslim Brotherhood, an extremist group in places like places like Egypt. And many times it would lead to abject chaos. This is one of the things that, of course, you covered there in the Maidan Revolution. But when it comes to this new doctrine, it's really about looking at the great powers and seeing at how the world actually is basically, in one way or the other, balanced between these powers. This is something that came up at Elbridge Colby's confirmation hearing today, when he talked about the fact that all of U.S. policy really should be oriented towards what he called not confronting or antagonizing China, but what he called containing China. And I say foreign policy in that perspective because he views the rise of China as the greatest geopolitical threat to the United States, which you and I and the War Room audience and the posse have been saying for, I think, almost half a decade at this point. Do you think that Trump and Vance view this as a step on the road towards that?
Yeah, look, I write in the piece. Let me quote myself here, okay? I write, the neoconservatives, neoliberals, and globalists should be pleased if they held true to their public pronouncements about democracy promotion, westernization, and even regime change in Russia. Those are almost a certainty in the coming decade if America plays its cards right. What do I mean by that? Vladimir Putin is not a young man. Vladimir Putin is not a well man. But you have a situation where, you're going to likely see one of two courses that Russia could take in the next 5-10 years. If you want that course to be, with China, with the Chinese Communist Party, then you go about foreign policy in the way that the establishment has done for the last 20 years. Remember, I'm old enough to remember, I'm sure a lot of this audience is too, I'm sure you are as well, Jack, the reset button. I'm old enough to remember George Bush palling around on golf courses with Vladimir Putin. The idea that you should be trying to get Russia, I won't even say on your side, but certainly not on the side of the Chinese Communist Party. The idea that that is new or that is unwelcome, that is the position of truly, truly dangerous people. Because what do those people want? I mean, if you're not after peace, you're after war. If you're not after westernization, you're after CCPization, right? That's what's happening here. Those are your choices, America. You might not love the choices in front of you, but you have to pick a path. And I will always champion the person who picks the path of peace and picks the path of getting towards a world which looks more like the United States, more free, not less.
And that's really what it comes down to. We've been talking for so long about the elite merger between the United States, the West, Western leaders, the EU, and the Chinese Communist Party, this free flow of the technocratic form of government that we saw, I think, most highly expressed in the COVID-19 moment, and the excesses there, which were clearly copied directly from the Chinese Communist Party and everything they were doing inside China. Well, all of the Western powers, starting with Italy, as everyone remembers, then Anthony Fauci picked it up as well, decided to go forth and see it. Do we really want to go down that road? I'm not sure. Raheem, can you hang for one more segment? We're hanging him over. We're holding him over, folks. Raheem Kassam here, Human Events Daily, Hour 3, Salem Radio Network.
back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. President Trump and his speechwriters are putting the finishing touches on tonight's speech to a joint session of Congress. While it's not a State of the Union address, the remarks will likely take on the tone of the president's traditional address before Congress. The 47th president will likely use the national stage to highlight his efforts to reshape the federal government, to crack down on illegal immigration. He'll also discuss his plans to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. Also hanging over the address to the joint session will be the potential for a government shutdown in less than 2 weeks if Congress doesn't pass a budget in order to move the president's agenda forward. While House and Senate Republicans are working to ensure that the dollars being appropriated in the spending plans make sense, there is reporting from Capitol Hill that lawmakers will likely pass another continuing resolution in order to buy themselves more time to get all of the necessary appropriations bills passed. There's also word that President Trump is on board with that CR. Ukrainian officials are responding to President Trump's decision to pause U.S. aid to the war-torn country by saying they'll do all they can to maintain ties with the United States. Just days after that now infamous Oval Office dressing down of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the hands of President Trump and Vice President Vance, the U.S. Commander-in-Chief has decided to at least temporarily stop aid to Ukraine. The move applies to all military equipment that hasn't yet arrived in the war zone. The current pause will reportedly last until the commander-in-chief determines that Ukraine's leaders demonstrate a commitment to peace. Mr. Trump and other senior aides are reportedly seeking acknowledgement from Zelensky, potentially in the form of a public apology, before moving ahead with the minerals deal or a discussion on continuing aid. 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada are in effect right now, sparking fear of a North American trade war. And just this morning, Mexico's president publicly condemned the move and promised retaliation. The taxes went into effect just after midnight. President Trump saying the move is to force the two countries to step up efforts to curb fentanyl trafficking and to stop illegal immigration. That's a check of your headlines.
And Jack, where's Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys that should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily, Washington, D.C. Want to tell you about our next product, which I was even actually able to use while on the ground and on that delegation to Ukraine, to Kiev. Yes, in fact, I was aboard that train, the night train to Kiev. I used silent Faraday products to block the incoming and outgoing signals from my devices, so that they were invisible and safe from the outside world. And you never know when you're going into a war zone which intelligence services, probably all of them, are going to be tracking you. So from their backpacks, phone sleeves, and even pants, patented signal blocking technology blocks wireless signals, giving you the peace of mind that your data doesn't end up in the wrong hands. Just place your device inside, close it, and that's it. You're safeguarded from unauthorized access. Between the government, big tech, corporate America, and criminals, your privacy is compromised 24/7. There's no other option. You have to protect yourself, and that starts with Silent. Go silent today at slnt.com/POSO to save 15% plus free shipping on qualifying orders. Stay ahead of what's coming and secure your privacy today. Again, that's slnt.com/POSO for 15% off and free shipping. I want to go back here to Raheem Kassam. Raheem, we were talking in the last segment about potentially a true pivot to Asia, something that the Biden administration and the Obama administration, even before them, were discussing, but never really occurred. It just never happened. It never happened whatsoever. They got totally bogged down in the Middle East because the insane policies that they were following, that they were executing on at the time, led to the rise of something we call ISIS. But China, meanwhile, continued to rise and continued to encircle the globe. I famously once quipped that the tentacles of the dragon stretch far beyond Beijing, even though, dragons don't exactly have tentacles, but this one does. So when we're looking at this, when we look at Elbridge Colby and his definition of trying to contain China within the First Island chain. And when we really talk economically, that's really, you put all this together, this is the connection between what President Trump is doing in terms vis-a-vis the Oval Office dispute between himself and Zelensky and J.D. Vance, as well as the tariffs. People don't think these are all connected, but they are. And we're seeing that emerging Trump doctrine through these actions. And I can only imagine that we're going to get more of that tonight in this address to Congress. Raheem, why is it that the media can't actually see the connections between all these moves?
Sorry, Jack. I mean, you lost me after a dragon with tentacles. I was just imagining that for the rest of the whole time you were talking.
It was a good one. It was one of my best.
As soon as I hop off here, I'm gonna get ChatGPT to make me an image, or Grok to make me an image like that. Why is your question? Do they not see it like this? I don't know. In a sense, I like to blame a lack of education. They don't read anything from history anymore, et cetera, et cetera. We know these things to be true. You and I talk about this offline a lot, but I actually think it's more of a lack of curiosity in general now that plagues the media class. A lot of just literalists. I mean, you saw it yesterday with, J.D. Vance disses Britain with this 20,000 troop comment. No, he was abstractly talking about, like you say, any Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? Like you could go to any country in Europe to do this, or you can come and sign this mineral deal and we'll get the peace plan done. Guess what, Jack? What was the news that we heard in the break that President Trump will announce tonight at the joint session that Zelensky is actually, after all, going to sign the mineral deal? Well, again, if the British press, like it has been over the last 24 hours, want to have kittens about some throwaway comments from J.D. Vance on Fox News, over the top of a peace plan, right? They are treating that as more important than ending killing and murder and suffering and war. Then it tells you far more about them than I could possibly tell you. These. Now, you know what's interesting though? I have noticed a change, and so I don't want to be too cruel to these people. I've noticed that since Trump won in November, I would say it's not all of them. It's probably not even most of them. But I would say every 1 in 4 reporters that I now talk to, and I tell the audience this all the time, I talk to these guys every single night. The far left, the neoliberal, the neocon, the centrist, the moderate, the warmongers, you name it. They all come to the restaurant and we all have conversations all day long. And I've noticed that about 1 in 4 of them now are amenable to the idea that they have been wrong for a very long time. And that's good. That deserves reward. That deserves a pat on the back, and that deserves us taking the time out for them and saying, okay.
I have to admit, I've had a few similar conversations in that very same restaurant.
Yeah, you're right. And so, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but that's also not to forget that the bathwater is quite dirty.
Yes. No, and I feel what it is your typical Western upper class, upper middle class elites are probably some of the most propagandized people possibly in all of history. We'll sit and make jokes about, that's like a segment from North Korean television, but we never sit and actually, to use the biblical reference, we never try to inspect the log in our own eye when it comes to our examination or re-examination of our priors or our preconceived notions. We have no theory of mind of Russia. We have no theory of mind of China. We have our own sort of caricature view that, okay, Putin is just he's just a Russian Hitler and he's going to sweep over all of Europe. And then he's, as Zelensky himself even said, come over the ocean and attack the United States. Why? How? We can't even get past the Donbass with the current military of Russia. And yet he's also simultaneously threatening the entire world. No one's ever seemed to be able to put that together. And then we also get these notions about, it's like when I hear Zelensky saying, well, they did this and they did this. It's like when my children are fighting and, one of them will say, well, he started it and he, did this when they're beating the crap out of each other. And I say, well, the first thing you have to do is stop fighting. And then we can have a discussion about where to go from there. But the first thing you have to do is stop fighting. And you're going to stop right now. And I don't really care who
sign this mineral deal.
And sign the mineral deal. Exactly. Which, of course, President Trump, it looks like he's doing the final version, which I'm sure is going to be very similar to the one that was presented when I traveled with Scott Bessent to Kiev, I guess 3 weeks ago now, which with Zelensky threw a fit over. He just threw an absolute fit over it. And we left. we turned and walked away. No, the real idea of it is that we're going to get away from the literalists in terms of thinking that these words and these quote unquote global norms. See, that's really the big piece of it, right, Raheem? It's this idea that the Western governments exist to uphold global universal norms everywhere in the world. And that's why we have to go in and intervene in any of these countries that's not upholding norms. Oh, you're not upholding norms in Afghanistan. We've got to go to war there again for another 20 years. They're not upholding norms in, the Sudan. So we've got to get involved and split away and Darfur and everything. But of course, we'll overlook any of the countries like, Saudi Arabia, who aren't upholding any norms whatsoever because it's in our interest to do so because of the global petrodollar. But when it really comes down to it, it's President Trump and J.D. Vance looking at the world for as it is, not this figment, fantasy land kind of version of things where, and you hear Keir Starmer talking like it's 1914 and, we've got to go and fight the Tsar in the Western marches of Eurasia. Sorry, it's not Sevastopol 2.0, right? It's not going to happen. No more Charge of the Light Brigade. It's done. We're not going to have that war anymore. We're not going to have that world anymore. We're going to have a serious conversation about the way the world is, because we keep playing all those games. Look, these are the same people who will sit there and say, and I'm kind of going here, but I'll cut off. These are the same people who sit there and say, we must beware of entangling alliances because it was these treaties that got us into these web of entangling treaties that got us into World War I. You mean kind of like what NATO is right now?
Yeah, and the idea that NATO was supposed to be some never-ending global alliance is also a nonsense. If you look at its founding documents and the people who actually put the thing together, you wanted to get to a point where you no longer had to have it. And yet now it's its own best lobbyist. And so that will become the next target after Governor Trudeau, by the way, which is a whole nother subject. But I just want to make another point about what you're saying. Let's get back to this literalism thing. If you question to yourself, ladies and gentlemen, of the audience here, how these people can be so obtuse, you have to remember, these are the people who live in Midtown Manhattan, but attack a family who is self-subsistent, living on a farm, for daring to take one vacation a year over the interest of climate change, right? Again, these are the people who live in Midtown Manhattan. And they don't see any irony in this. For them, this is they're doing the Lord's work in their heads, right? Like it's twisted, and you'll never get those people there. But for the 25% that we mentioned earlier, Jack, I think it's interesting because these are not people necessarily on the fringes either. I mean, I'm talking about people in major news organizations who are coming to me and saying, hey, by the way, I definitely have it all wrong, and I want to sit down with you and pick your brain over how we don't go down that route again. They certainly are losing love for the establishment and the Democrat Party as a result of just how wrong they've had it for so very long. So while the Democrats actually, and I saw, what's his name yesterday, put out that video that said the American public is with us, standing outside the Congress, putting his blackest voice on, right? And... No, he was. I mean, if a black man could do blackface, that was it, right? And they are in total disarray. The institutional Democratic Party, as people know. But I don't think people quite realize just yet how further they are yet to fall. Watch the response tonight. It is going to be childish. It is going to be tantrumy. It is going to turn the American people away from that party, even more so than Kamala and the fancy boy that ran with her. Forget his name.
As do I. We'll be watching for that. Raheem Kassam, his predictions always have a habit of coming true. Make sure you go and follow him at Raheem Kassam, as well as the National Pulse. Go and subscribe. We'll be right back here. Human Events Daily, third hour. Charlie Kerr, Salem Radio Network.
Jack is a great guy. He's written a fantastic book. Everybody's talking about it. Go get it. And he's been my friend right from the beginning of this whole beautiful event. And we're going to turn it around and make our country great again. Amen.
The position of Undersecretary of Defense for Policy is a role that comes with genuinely profound and grave responsibilities. And my nomination comes at a time, as this committee has eloquently laid out, of deep peril for our country. Peace and the protection of American interests in the world cannot be assumed. There is a real risk of major war, and we cannot afford to lose one. I recognize these realities in my bones. It is my great hope that we can get through the coming years peacefully, with strength, in ways that put us and our alliances on a stronger and more sustainable footing. I am deeply committed to a foreign and defense policy that realistically protects and advances all Americans' security, freedoms, and prosperity, that I'm willing and ready to engage with those who disagree with me and adapt my views based on persuasive arguments and the facts, that I value our alliances deeply, even as I think they must be adapted, and that I love our great country and will put its interests first and foremost. If confirmed, I pledge to strive with every fiber to meet the grave responsibilities of this important office with judgment, commitment, and determination.
When I'm working long hours, I'm always listening to Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here. We have a very special guest with us, folks. It is none other than the founder of the Gulf of America himself, Kevin Posobiec. What's up, Kev?
What's going on? Great to be back on the show. Founder, discoverer. What else could we put on me here?
He likes to say discoverer. I think founder. I think that's what you need in the Twitter bio. Founder of the Gulf of America.
We could change it. Yeah, listen, I just got back from downtown. I was meeting with the architect of the Capitol. They're 3D printing my body to make a sculpture, a statue of me.
Now, what's that process? What's that process like? Do the lasers hurt, or do you feel them, or is it like a red light? How's it go?
No, it's not worse than TSA, not worse than those X-ray machines.
Not as bad as X-ray machines. Okay.
Yeah. So they're gonna
Michael Chertoff X-ray
I'm up
machines.
there. I'm up there with Christopher Columbus now, Jack. They're gonna put me on the beach. We're putting a house in.
But did you declare it for Trump and in the name of God?
That's true. That's true. First and foremost, I did declare in the name of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
That's exactly right. Christ is King.
Let's go. Yeah. So it was a great time. Great time.
But when it came down to it, what does it feel? Now it's been a couple of weeks, but I haven't actually had you on since it happened. What's it like actually getting the recognition for having been the person that really got this idea to the president and actually see it, come to fruition?
It was just a passing thought, a bit of a dream, if you will. But to see, it's been a week since the Washington Post has interviewed me. And then, what is it now? Over 2 weeks that the AP still has not recognized the Gulf of America.
Well,
so what do they get to do? They get to sit on the sidelines.
They get the boot. They get those boot like Zelensky, right? So here, think of it, folks. Kevin is out on a wave runner in the middle of the Gulf of America.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, it's almost a full year, right? Next month will be a year because it was 420.
That's right.
And
that's true. Yeah,
we celebrating 420, Kev. We celebrating.
We could.
No, Kev.
They sure do down there. In the Gulf.
We don't do that. No, we don't do that, folks. We don't do that. But
not
Kev.
Nothing. No comment.
Mom watches the show, Kev.
We could. So what else is happening then? What are we going to do?
So what we need to do is get an understanding, an absolute understanding of the way to figure it all out is, look, AP is now completely blanched out of the White House. You turfed him out.
Isn't it Reuters too?
Anyone that doesn't stick with the United States, that doesn't stick with the law in our country, new federal law, that means you can't go, and there's now a court order. So because you started with that a year ago, now it's federal law. Now a judge has actually struck down the White House Correspondents Association, and it's all thanks to you, Kev.
They thought it was a First Amendment right. That's the grounds they brought to the judge, and the judge said, nope, it's a policy of the White House now. And they overturned it. And so still, AP is refusing. And
because there's no law. There's no law that says that you have to be in the Oval Office.
They were quick to recognize the change of Kiev to Kyiv.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, they changed the spelling
real quick.
And Turkey to Turkey.
Turkey, right.
So, Kevin, do you have...
Everyone knows where Turkey is.
Here's what I need to know. Do you have any ideas or other things that you might want to change, other bodies of water, any names, anything else come to mind?
Let's see. First off, maybe Baja California could be MAGA California.
MAGA California. Uh-oh.
That's a runner-up.
Uh-oh.
That's a runner-up.
The one you said the other day, Panama Canal into
the American
Canal. It's pretty simple.
That's on its way. It's true. That's what it is. We built it. Come on.
Right, but even change the name. All the way. All right, we're going to do that.
Change the name all the way.
We're going to drop that out. Kevin, where can people go and follow you to get access to more of your incredible visionary ideas?
There's more MAGA content, more thought-provoking content on my socials, on X and Instagram. It's just my name. It's really me. I do my own content. at Kevin Posobiec or Kev Posobiec. I might just go back to Kev. We'll see how it goes. I mean,
be careful, folks. He tweets pretty rapidly. You might get 10 tweets a week out of this guy. This is a lot of content there, just flying at you.
We're quality over quantity. Over here.
Quality over quantity. Okay, I see how it is. Yeah, only quality, only gems on Poso's TL. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have our permission to lay ashore here, Real America's Voice and Hour 3, Charlie Kirk, Sound Radio Network.
Founder.
You asked, and we heard you, America.
Real America's Voice is coming to iHeartMedia.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app, and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.